get it twisted.
Yeah.
And hey, I'm wearing my Flash shoes today, so you know I'm feeling extra super.
I'm feeling a bit naked.
With
I just got these lame socks. Holy crap!
Anytime it's game time, like if I have a big presentation with a big crowd, my Flash socks go on, so that I know that there's a little bit of the superhero underneath. I'm ready to pull it out if need be.
All right. Well, you just might have to here.
You might have to.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Steele Entrepreneur Show. We have Marco Pasqua with us, and it is episode 38 for the record.
Yes.
Marco is an entrepreneur, he's a speaker, he is a man of many talents. Here I am going off the script. I gotta stay with the script or we're gonna start over here again.
We'll be good. I believe in you.
What makes Marco so unique in my eyes though is not so much any of that, and it's the reason I have him on the show today.
Cool.
He's an incredible connector of human beings, and through this, he's been able to create a personal brand for himself, which has him rubbing shoulders regularly with some of Vancouver's and Canada's biggest CEOs. That's true, right? You were
that is actually very true.
Okay, because now I've got you on.
I have to keep myself authentic and honest.
People that, quite frankly, you were talking about some of them that I would love to be in the room with, and it's through that I was just like, holy shit, how is this guy doing this? I need to have him on the show.
Great.
Cool.
Well, here I am. And today you're on location in my house.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't even think about that. We aren't in the normal location.
No.
Danny, as you'll soon discover, or you've already discovered, I don't have any furniture anymore. So it's all going to be different next time. You'll see. It's going to be kind of cool. So Marco, tell those who pay attention who you are.
So who's Marco? Wow, it depends on what angle you're kind of going at. But I guess, as you said, I'm a connector of people. I've always loved the idea of taking somebody's natural-born talents, skills, and really being able to work within your natural abilities to try to find and help other people. I basically wanted to build a business out of helping other people discover their full potential. So that has kind of played a part in who I am as a person because growing up, I was, I don't know, people can't tell on the camera, but I use a wheelchair. I have cerebral palsy. I have a disability that affects my two legs and my right arm. And with my dad being an immigrant,
you're stealing all my goddamn questions.
Well, I'm sorry, Matt. I'm sorry. I won't go into too much detail.
You've already done
question
3, question 4.
Boom. You said tell a little bit about it. So
go ahead.
Essentially, that builds into who I've become as an entrepreneur, as understanding struggle and challenge, and basically building off of that to find solutions within those struggles and challenges. I'll stop there so that we can get to your questions.
Cool. All right. One of the things that I learned during my research of you, just looking online and talking to folks, is you started making appearances in front of large groups on TV, on radio from a very, very young age.
Yeah.
How young?
I was about 9 years old the first time that I started making appearances.
Like a child celebrity.
That's kind of how it goes, especially because telethons back in the 90s were a really big thing.
I've literally never seen a telethon.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that they were huge in the 90s.
Have you seen a telethon?
I don't know.
A telethon?
So a telethon is a fundraiser that is televised. Yeah. And they used to be between 22 and 24 hours long, where you would show segments or clips about a particular cause. You see ones for Children's Hospital and things like this.
I've seen that on Seinfeld once.
That's right. There you go. So you know it's legitimate. But they don't really do telethons anymore. But back in the day, they would choose for lack of a better term, and I don't want to blast on this at all, but they would choose a poster child. Yeah. Somebody who the funds would be raising for has directly impacted or their family.
Makes sense.
And I was asked one year, and I do have a clip on it on my website actually, the time I was asked, where I'm on stage talking to legendary Red Robinson. He's a local radio host. He's the guy who first interviewed
He's an old dude.
The Beatles. That's right.
Yeah.
The Beatles, Elvis Presley when they first came to Canada.
Yep.
And so Red was interviewing us, and I was showing the audience, because it was nationally televised telethon, my check for $100, which was a big deal for me because I was giving back money to an organization that helped me to go to summer camp with somebody with a disability as a kid. And he goes, oh, that's fantastic. You know, you're so good at promoting this right now. Like, I think it'd be fantastic if you come back next year and do what we call promotions. Would you like that?
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I was what they called the Timmy for the Timmy's Christmas Telethon, which is essentially the name they gave to the ambassador. I think it's based on Tiny Tim. That sounds terrible, but it isn't. It was for a great cause, and they would fly me out to the Queen Charlotte Islands and various places to be that ambassador, that representative of why it's so important to give.
How do you think you hear about like the celebrities and stuff like that talk about how it was tough to start as early as they did, and that had some both positive and negative sort of ramifications in their later life.
Yeah.
How do you think, if at all, those early experiences, that early exposure shaped you?
Oh, big time. Actually, for the positive for me, because I realized as sitting, like, they used to make a big deal out of it, so they would go to the Queen Elizabeth Theatre and have hundreds and hundreds of people sitting in the live audience.
That's here, right?
That's right, in Vancouver.
Yeah.
But then from there, they would be broadcast on, I think it was CBC TV at the time, so it was across Canada, which was really neat. And I remember being a young kid, not really quite understanding television as a whole, just knowing what I watched on TV, but then realizing there's these cameras, there's these people, and they're hanging on every single word I'm saying. And the cool thing is that they're laughing because I'm this cute kid saying these things that matter to me, but I realized you could turn television and radio into something positive. Many times we focus so much in the news about what's going on negatively, and it was in those moments where I'm seeing this host with this mic in my face and this camera looking at me saying, what do you want to say to the audience and to the world? That I realized, hey, this could literally, maybe not in these terms because I was young, but this could be a soapbox for you to really advocate
kind of
for the things you
instrument for change.
That's right. So we don't have to be focused on the things that are negative in the world. We can actually use this as a way and as a platform to push a positive agenda, for lack of a better term. So.
When you get in front of these, like you've now done it for so many years, how has your approach in front of the camera, radio, whatever it may be, how do you think your approach has changed over time, or how has it morphed, or how has it progressed? Or
I think it's evolved from the aspect of, I'll be completely honest in saying that even to this day, before I go and do a big talk, I get a little bit of anxious or a little bit of excited nerves. And I love that because when I was younger, I didn't know how to harness that. And that's where the Q principle comes in, but I'll explain that a little bit later, is understanding that whether it's an audience of 500 people or 5 people, it's about making that personal connection. And as I grew into it, I learned more how to make that connection with both the interviewer, but also with the audience, as though I'm just speaking to my best friend in my basement about why it matters. Because it's that authenticity that I always talk about in my written work and in my speaking that really makes a difference. People connect with you not because of what you're selling it, but why you're selling it. What's the reason behind it? So if you can actually have a direct correlation or tie-in to why it matters to you, that's why somebody will buy your chocolate bar versus the next chocolate bar, right? It's making that authentic connection, and that is something that I've only learned over time.
Do you think, you mentioned that oftentimes you'll pick a specific person.
Sure.
I remember I was doing, Lucas Mattiello was on this show, one of the first, and I remember when I was going through some of his classes, he would sort of teach you to kind of start here and then work your way there, and I'm kind of curious how you work the room.
It's called scanning the room. And there's a lot of speakers out there that do it really robotically, which I find really strange. They'll actually make a point of, they come on this stage and they'll take a deep breath, and then they'll literally, I had an instructor once that literally was trying to teach us to literally take a breath and then you do a full room scan. But I find that super awkward with no spoken word, and you're going, and you do the full, and I'm like, whoa, what is this, the Terminator? I think what it really is acknowledging the room and the space that you're in. You can make that direct contact, so you find a loved one or even a friend or even somebody with a cool, funky shirt in the audience, because oftentimes, depending on the environment you're in, if you're in a big auditorium or theater, you can only really see the front row because of the house and the stage lights. So you focus in on that person and you make that personal connection with that person, but don't make sure that you're not ignoring the rest of the sides of the room either. Make a contact with somebody over here and somebody over here. That way you're not so wrapped up in the idea of you have to make eye contact with every single person because it's just not possible. But it's like how they teach you body language. It's like, oh, I'm finding it so awkward to stare into people's eyes. Well, they teach you about the X that's right above the bridge of the nose. And they say if it makes you feel better, stare into the X above the bridge of the nose and not directly into someone's eyes.
That's weird now that I'm doing it.
That's right. But it looks like you're looking directly in my eyes, but it's less awkward for you because you're not having to stare right into my pupil. So I guess the same thing goes when you're on stage. Different things work for different speakers and performers and whatnot, but that for me is what works best. I pick 3 people, left, middle, and right, and I just go from there.
Does anybody ever come back to you and be like, you were staring at me the entire time or something like that?
You know, and maybe I'll come back with something like super coy and be like, it's because I knew you needed me in that moment. No, no, honestly.
Of course.
Most people actually comment the most because, I don't know if you can tell, I talk a lot with my hands. I'm super high energy on stage. So rather than let that nervous energy or excited energy consume me, I actually let it turn it into power shots where I'm just like boom, boom, boom. The thing I've had to learn though is slowing down regardless because you get so fired up. Exactly, I'm doing it right now and I'm in my own home, right? I get so fired up that it's powerful, but people can feel it. You know, when you hear the term, that guy gave me a bad vibe, that's based on something real. Let's talk about the literal vibrations that we give off as human beings. We're just atoms and molecules, right? And literally, if somebody is having a crappy day and whatever, the reason why you feel it, the reason why people say it really got chilly in here is because literally we do have a bit of an aura that we give off. And the same thing, if you were to record the energy levels in a room, if a comedian is really hitting it hard and the crowd is loving it and laughing, it's because literally you're taking them to a different vibration level. And that's what I try to do with my presentations, to get people at the same level that I'm at so they can ride the wave with me.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you, there's some conferences where people have spoken, you don't really feel anything afterwards, and then there's some presenters where you just want to run up and get a selfie with them because they made you feel a certain way.
Absolutely. There was a speaker once who said they'll never remember what you said or did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. So it's not about them necessarily remembering the specifics of what you said, but it's those emotions. So when I talk about my grandfather or something personal, I'm not expecting somebody to have that moment where my grandfather flashes in their head. It's about making that personal connection of they remember a time with their own grandfather or a father figure or somebody like that where they go, I get it. And then that real emotion hits, and now I have them. Because now they literally understand how I felt in that moment when I'm explaining that story. And that's where you'll evoke the most emotions out of people, is where they make that personal connection. It's not about BS. It's about getting them to where they want to be and where they need to be. And why is it that they paid for a ticket to come see you at the show? You better deliver. And the point of delivering is making sure that they feel like they can walk away with something. I made a point when I started my business, I didn't want to just fade out into the background and just another speaker with a disability and rah, 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 he's a champion, he's such a hero shot. I don't want to be a hero shot. I want to be known for what I speak about and the content that I deliver. And secondary to that is he happens to use a wheelchair.
How did you take what you were doing previously? So you're kind of doing free gigs, or you're doing gigs where, you know, maybe they done something for you, and so you're kind of doing it in exchange.
Yes.
Or, you know, I'm sure it came also from a place of just you wanted to straight up just help people, right?
Yes, that's what it's about.
But how were you able to, and what were some of the challenges along the way transitioning from free, quote unquote, to paid gigs?
Well, I won't delve too deep into the previous industry I was in. I was previously in the video game industry. So I didn't actually go straight from starting in the working world and going, I know I want to be a speaker. I was in the game industry, and I don't know if you're going to dive into that at all, but essentially there were circumstances that led me to be starting my speaking. And I remember, because there was a bit of a hiatus from being a 9-year-old to now being like 19 or 20 and going like, this is what I'm doing with my life, and then finally making the decision of I'm going to actually start my business, which happened in 2012. And initially, it was going back to those first contacts that knew me from various charitable organizations. The hardest hurdle for me was getting over the fact that now I'm doing this as a full-time gig and having them understand that although I was once a poster child, you know, I'm not a kid anymore, and now I have a message to deliver, and it is a message that's worth paying for. And so this is that message. So I would start with those initial contacts in charitable organizations, and I had to be really creative. So the Q principle, creatively utilize your best energy, be creative about what it is that I was doing to approach them. So what could I do to give back with them without expectation? And of course, charitable organizations, they're looking for funds to fund their causes. Yeah. And so that's where I started. And I don't know if you have a question built into that, or if you want me to touch on this now about things like the drop zone and various other things like that. But that's essentially how I decided to really make my mark, is start off my business with a bang, literally. Yeah. So for me, that was finding the craziest way I could fundraise money and have it be a spectacle that wouldn't cost me any money. And not only would it not cost me money, but I'd actually be able to raise money for the organization that was supporting me.
Where you rappelled off
the side of
how many stories?
20 stories off the side of a building.
And so if I remember, I was watching a little bit of it, and so if I watched it properly, basically first they brought the chair off the building.
Right.
So the chair was like basically dangling.
Yeah.
And then they harnessed you and lowered you into the chair.
Correct.
Now, did they then connect you to the chair? Like how did?
So to preface this, the crew that was hooking me up, and I told you this in our private chat, was the same crew who helped the Chilean miners when there was that mine collapse. So I'd already made, whether they were BSing or not, that made me feel fantastic.
Sure. You made peace with the risk.
I made peace with it. If you watch the video, see my wife's face is completely pale white. She was very, very nervous. And we only found out once I got to the top of the building that they actually had to have me on a singular rope where I would put myself in my chair off the side of the building, and then they would have one of their crew swing over the side and make sure that I was belted in, and I have photos of that. Yeah. So that was the most nerve-wracking part, and being able to explain.
So they belted you into the chair once they got you into the chair.
Correct. Gotcha. But before that, all I had was the single rope that was helping to basically stabilize my hips, as I did almost like you would dive into a pool or sit on the ledge of a pool and then let yourself drop in, except this drop was dropping into my wheelchair 20 stories above live traffic. It's called the Drop Zone. It was for an organization called the Easter Seals, and they're around the globe. Easter Seals, they do a lot of great work. And actually, the second year that I did it is when I was able to convince. I think it was the second year. I was able to convince Lucas Mattiello. You mentioned Lucas to join the team with me. And
you guys did it for 2 years, or he did it for 1 year?
He did it for the 1 year.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the theme of this is you're a superhero. So we're dressed up in spandex, and I'm wearing tight blue spandex and long like ankle or knee socks and stuff. And our team was called Team Inspirational because I had my friends Fiona Forbes and Michael Eckford from Shaw TV, and they had a show called Urban Rush. Yeah. And so I said to Fiona, knowing that she was afraid of heights, I said, would this make good TV for you? And I explained what it was, and she goes, well, I'm terrified of heights. I said, I know, but think about this. This would be fantastic. We'd be able to raise money for Easter Seals. So she reluctantly agreed at first. And so she had us on her daytime talk show, and Lucas was on the show as well. And we're explaining the cause. And so it was myself, Lucas, Matt Astafan, who I don't know if you've interviewed him or not on the show, but I know he's a friend of yours.
Not yet.
That's
Matt,
right.
I'm coming for you.
There you go. Michael Eckford and Fiona Forbes. And the first year we raised $5,000 for kids with special needs to go to summer camp. Yeah. And amazing. I had a GoPro attached to my chair, a bunch of GoPros. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't nervous. I mean, I'm looking down and there's live traffic and cars honking and things like this. But as soon as I touched down, I didn't want to do it. I could have done it outside of my wheelchair, but it's way more of a spectacle to have somebody literally looking like a wrecking ball on the side of a building. And it was literally, because of the wind, it was kind of blowing my chair up against the glass of the building. But we survived, and I went back the next year, and we raised over $8,000 the next year. So it was awesome. And the cool thing about that think back to what I said, utilizing your network, utilizing people for all of the good reasons. I was able to help out a friend who had a talk show, giving them great content on the show. I was able to help out an organization that's been supporting myself and my family for years by raising money for kids and their families to go to camp. But I was also able to promote my business by literally putting into action the things I talk about facing your fears and overcoming challenges. And even Lucas was able to talk Fiona through her fear of heights And that's often what he does is he talks people through their fears and their challenges. And you had him on the show, so you know all about that.
Yeah, I don't remember. Do you remember what episode that was, Danny? Was that 30?
32.
Jesus
I think it was.
Christ, this guy. He knows more about our show than we do.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you know.
You do your research,
I do my
friend.
research. I knew you were researching me, so I had to pay it back.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
My next question, it kind of came from something I talked to your wife about.
Okay. Oh no.
And then I kind of realized it for myself. I'll just go for it.
Sure.
When we met, like full disclosure, I can't remember the last time that I was around somebody in a wheelchair. I just don't remember. So I was thinking to myself, okay, well, is there like things I shouldn't say? I honestly did a fucking Google search.
Yeah. Oh, did you really?
I just did.
Wow.
I didn't want to be stupid.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to make sure that I didn't offend or I didn't.
Oh, that's Google okay. Home? I think my Google Home is talking to us. That's
yeah, because I said Google.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'm going to try and avoid that word for now on.
Yeah, that's okay.
Anyhow,
they're always listening,
no.
Right? Yeah. So you did a blank search.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure I got. But anyways, so I got we met, we went down to the water and everything. We sat down, we had a chat, and what your wife pointed out, and then I realized later on is like I totally forgot any of the research or anything that I even thought about. I forgot that you were even in a wheelchair. Period.
Good.
It just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And it was like she described it as magic, and then I was like, yes, like I just forgot.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, and I think that has a lot to do with your attitude or your approach or you. And so I kind of wanted to dig into that a little bit and understand why do you think I felt that way? Why do you think your wife points that out? What's up with that?
I think for me, it's about the way in which I approach life. My parents always raised me to believe that nothing is really a challenge. And so when I'm speaking to people, it's less about that. It's literally about me making that actual connection with them. So the chair fades into the background. And I always tell this story because it's funny. I've had friends who've known me for over a decade. And, we're going to the beach or whatever, and we load up our regular stuff. And I hop into the passenger seat, and we're driving off. And my buddy Shane will be like, oh, shit. What? Oh, I left your chair in the driveway, man. And we're like 10 minutes out now. Because, it's not about that. And it's never been about that. Yeah. Even literally, if he's going to fireman carry me up a hill because we have to go on a hike somewhere, he totally forgets about the chair. And that just happens because I don't make it the center of my life. Yes, I look at my wheelchair as the extension to my personality. So if you see it, it's red and black. Those are my favorite colors. It's got lights. It's got a whole rigged up system to it.
Does it actually have lights?
It's got lights on the side and on the back. So at nighttime, I can turn those on, and I can give you a light show later. But it's pretty cool, man. And I look at it as almost like how somebody would treat their vehicle. Yeah. It gets me from point A to point B, but it's not me. But I also am proud of it. I identify with it. Whereas there are some people with disabilities, and to each their own, they have a chip on their shoulder, and they're saying, this is not me. And maybe it's different because I was born with my disability, whereas there are people who acquire their disability later on in life who become quadriplegics or paraplegics. And maybe for some folks, it's not something that they want to identify with. For me, I use it as a tool of empowerment. Of saying, heck yeah, I use a wheelchair, but watch what I do with it.
Yeah.
And watch what I'm able to do with my life and not let it hold me back. And I think that's what puts people at ease. Karen has often told me that it just relaxes people. Because I'm not making a thing of it, they don't make a thing of it, and then they're just like, you know what, I'm super comfortable right now. Yeah, and I just don't think about it.
That day I got the worst sunburn. I told Karen about that. My whole arm and up to my neck.
We should have switched sides. We should have switched sides. Yeah, totally. Yeah, SPF, everyone. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
We, I'm sure some of the folks that are watching this right now, maybe they've got, disabled family members, maybe
or invisible disabilities.
Sure, maybe they will give birth to, a child with a disability.
Sure.
What can we learn from the amazing job that your parents did, and from what I understand, your sister is all like, what can we all learn from that?
Yeah,
What's the take home there?
The take home definitely is remembering that it is nurture and nature. So it's not just the environment, but literally just approaching everything that you can with, as cheesy as it sounds, with as much of a positive attitude as you possibly can. Yeah, that's not to say I didn't have struggles or there weren't things that got in the way when I wanted to do certain things or certain sports that I couldn't do.
Yeah.
But being open-minded enough to know that you can adapt on the fly. So I can't be a traditional basketball player, but I can do wheelchair basketball. So I couldn't necessarily be the next Michael Phelps, but I could join a swim team. You know, so finding the ways in which you can find the sports or whatever activities are going to get you in the right headspace, because a healthy body is a healthy mind. And so starting out with those sports and those athletics at an early age, my dad was an athlete, and as an immigrant, he came here from Italy, and he had these huge dreams of me being a sports star. And then when he found out about my cerebral palsy, he was like, oh, I don't know, can he still do it? And so I almost made it my life mission at that point to say, yeah, Dad, I am going to still do it. I may not do traditional soccer, but I'll do basketball, I'll do track and field, I'll do swimming, I'll do horseback riding, I'll do whatever. And I did them all and blessed my parents because they got me to every single, practice throughout the week. And that's not an easy task for any parent. But on top of that, you have the expenses that may be associated with having a child with a disability, including wheelchairs, special therapies, and not once. They may have done this behind closed doors, but not once to my face did my parents ever bat an eye and say that it was too hard for them. Not to my face. And I know since then they've opened up to me and said that there were nights where they were sad at first and they cried about it. But they never showed me those fears or those tears. Yeah. They showed me the way in which they chose to approach the situation, and maybe that's how it got built into my character.
Well, it definitely has.
Yeah, like, nah. You know, yeah, you're going to be hard about it. And there would be times where I would be super sad, and I'm not going to lie, there are bouts of depression. But it's what you learn coming out of those bouts of the depression that help you to grow and to mature as a person. Yeah. And I want to turn those lessons and those stories into empowering things that other people can do within their own lives to find a way out of the darkness, for lack of a better term.
I like that, the darkness.
Yeah, the darkness.
Tell me about what you're doing with Van City right now.
Yeah, it's a really cool opportunity.
Van City is a
credit union.
Yeah, local to Vancouver, or local to at least the greater Vancouver.
That's right. Yeah. They actually made a choice not to go national. Okay. They had an option to go national, but they're all about representing people from their community. So they stayed. Long story short, I'm actually.
I don't believe you.
Well, exactly. I'm going to try my best. Long story short, with Van City, Van City's hosting this position called an accessibility and inclusion consultant. Yeah. So there's myself and one other individual. It's a 2-year contract where we are actually working with 23 business leaders, thought leaders, and CEOs of some of the most reputable companies in the city who have put their hand up and say, we believe in being inclusive employers, meaning hiring individuals with disabilities across the spectrum, whatever that looks like.
These are big time
These are big companies. We're talking the Vancouver Airport, Van City, HSBC, Save On Meats. Like, there's smaller businesses as well, but these are big time folks.
Good for Save On Meats. They're always mixing it up.
They're always mixing it up. And they help a lot with the downtown east side. Mark Brand is
incredible.
A social entrepreneur if I ever saw one. And the reason why this contract...
You're going to have to connect me one of these days.
I will connect you with Mark Brand.
Incredible things.
No, if you want me to, I'll connect you with Mark Brand. He's a great guy. But that's the whole thing, is that when I approached this opportunity, I actually came off the back of work I was doing with the city of Surrey. I was working part-time on a contract with them out of City Hall on accessibility. And the manager there, she knew I was doing my speaking work and stuff on the days when I wasn't at City Hall, because it's such a great thing to be able to say I'm helping the physical built environment for accessibility. And she said, there's this cool opportunity that came across my desk to be an accessibility inclusion consultant with this thing called the President's Group, which is basically a committee of these 23 CEOs. And I was like, that sounds incredible. Like, I'm like, but you realize if I do this, it's going to take away from my work with the city of Surrey. And she's like, it doesn't matter. This is a great opportunity for you as a speaker, as a spokesperson, and as an advocate. Somebody that I never wanted to be that token advocate guy. I actually avoided it. But people are like, you got to do this because your fire, your passion behind what you're doing, combining your talent as a speaker with what you believe in as a cause and putting people's abilities first rather than their disabilities. And so that's what we're doing. This is a 2-year contract to literally change the face of inclusive employment across, hopefully, the entire province. So we're building in policies, procedures, and standards based off of these 23 companies and what they've learned about being inclusive employers. And hopefully the rest of the province of British Columbia will follow suit, and maybe it'll create a ripple
So you're kind of
effect.
putting together like a how-to.
That's right.
Based on the combined learnings and experiences of all the
Yes.
people involved in this committee.
Correct. And it is a heck of a networking opportunity as well to be
don't
able to
doubt it.
rub shoulders with some of these CEOs and these really highfalutin individuals who are part of a greater movement, we'll say, of saying, yeah, we see that we're very powerful in our positions, but we also see that with that power, not to sound like Spider-Man, comes great responsibility, and the responsibility of making sure that everyone has the opportunity to live and work and have great quality of life in this province. And that's why I said yes. And there was a struggle for me to even consider the contract. I was kind of hemming and hawing over it because I said, how much of that will take away from who I am as an entrepreneur? And
I
then
wanted to talk about that.
Yeah,
bit,
no, we
actually.
can
How
dive into
How do you
that.
reconcile that? Because you have like business hours
Sure.
in a kind of, you got
Yeah.
a business hours, you have a place you need to go into work, et cetera, et cetera. Like how do you reconcile that as an entrepreneur?
So basically, my whole struggle initially as an entrepreneur is thinking, well, isn't that just going to work for somebody again? But I actually look at it as paid education. Think about it this way. If you don't look at it as a job, but it's paid education. I'm getting paid to learn on the fly in no better way from some of the greatest CEOs in the country, how they've lived and worked. I'm getting paid to be an advocate for the things that I'm already passionate about anyways, and making an impact on not only my city, but my province. So if you approach it from not the fact that, yeah, there's a hierarchy and yeah, there are certain people, but they knew that going in that I'm an entrepreneur. They respect that. They say, we don't want you to lose your entrepreneurial edge. That's why we're considering you as one of the consultants. We want to use your ability as a spokesperson, that fire, that passion that you bring, and the skill sets you've learned to carve out as an entrepreneur when it comes to organizational stuff and meeting with people. Don't lose that. Use that. And what we will add to that are things like building out these policies, building out these standards. If you can deal with that and every once in a while come into the Van City head office, who's because Tamara Vrooman, the CEO of Van City, is the co-chair of the President's Group, she was nice enough to say, let's not just make this something off the side of these consultants' desks. I'll put up my hand and say Van City will literally host these roles and give them full-time benefits and all of these various things so that they can walk through the orientation process of what it's like to be a Van City employee, but also giving them the space of understanding that they're technically not an employee for Van City, but a consultant for all the 23 companies involved in the President's Group. That's the best way I can explain it.
Well, I think you did a
Yeah.
terrific job of explaining it.
Yeah.
I had a question. I'm trying to remember what it was now because it's kind of one that I really meant to ask. I think maybe I'll come back to it.
Sure.
Actually, it was actually a comparison. Now I remember.
Okay.
I've got in the work that I do, I've got a number of clients, and sometimes it feels like instead of having 20 clients, I have 20 bosses.
Yep.
Right.
Of course.
And so the way I've chosen to look at it, and it's certainly the way that you look at it, is, here this wonderful client has decided that they're going to trust me. They're going to pay me, whatever amount of money, retainer per month.
Yep.
And I'm going to have the opportunity to continue to further my learning in working with them. And so I work with them closely and I get to understand their business, their business acumen, their customers, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
They are essentially, every single one of them is essentially paying for my education every single day.
That's right. And they're
Which is
learning
incredible.
from you just as much as you're
Totally.
learning from them.
It's really a partnership in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like you literally couldn't buy that kind of education because they're actually paying you to understand what it's like to walk a mile in their shoes. And every single client and entrepreneur has a different story to tell. And that's the way that I approach it, right? Is that, this contract with Van City and with the President's Group takes up a big chunk of my time, but I'm also building off the skill sets of things I already love to do. panel events, interviews, keynote presentations. These are all things that I was already doing, but now while wearing the hat as a representative and advocate, going back to my telethon days and my fundraising days, it's like wearing the hat for the President's Group instead of another organization and saying this is why it matters.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of, since we're kind of talking about networking a little bit.
Sure.
And certainly it's through networking that you got this gig, and now you're networking there, and you're going to get sort of, more gigs from there.
Sure,
and,
sure.
Have you ever heard that saying, what is it? Your network is your net worth. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have heard that.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's not necessarily tied back to a financial gain. It's about what is your social value, right? And so
Your
a lot of people,
social net worth.
yeah. What's your social net worth? What do you? So I always approach it this way, and I've said this a number of times in different interviews. But you're only as good as the last person that remembers you. Right? So if I was wiped off the face of the earth tomorrow, it doesn't matter how much is posted about me on social media. Eventually those posts will fade away because they won't rank as well in Google search engines. And you know all about that stuff. But no, it's about your memories with people and making those authentic connections. And I'll tie it back to the key principle again, creatively utilizing your best energy. What energy are you putting out there to really affect and impact the people around you in your social circle? And I hope that if I were hit by a bus tomorrow, knock on wood that I'm not, the people would say, you know what, Marco was a legitimate guy, he was an authentic guy, and he did what he could to make an impact, and that's your net worth. The impact you create in your social circle and by extension, those individual social circle is really all you have to take the bank. Because when we die, we don't get to bring our bank account with us. So all these material things and the money and stuff, that's secondary. And I think that is really the approach I took when building this business is, yeah, I can write a 60-page business plan, and I did. But the plan is completely changed from the day that I built it. I had a way different idea as to how I was going to approach this whole being a speaker thing. And now I've sort of listened to my business, understanding that it's like a living, breathing baby. You have to nurture it, you have to understand it, but it will also tell you when something isn't working. And to be able to be not stubborn, because stubbornness kills all businesses, if you can say, it's not about the color scheme you like in your logo or any of those things. What are your customers saying that they want to see out of the work you're producing? And let that be your guide. And if you trust that, then you'll be successful. It just all depends on how you define success and your net worth.
How do you nurture this network, or what is the management of said network? Because your network is vast at this point.
Sure.
So what does that look like from sort of a day-to-day? What tools do you use?
Sure.
That kind of thing.
So another speaker by the name of Colin Sprake, he's local too.
How do you spell that last name?
Sprake, Colin Sprake.
Yeah.
He's a local guy as well, and I've heard him say this, so I'm not going to take credit for it. But he defines people in networking groups in 3 categories: connectors, collectors, and jerks. And I don't know if I talked to you about
connectors,
collectors, and jerks. Yeah.
Okay.
So I look at it this way. So connectors are the ones that are authentically trying to make a real connection with you. They're not just going to a meetup and just being like, I'll connect with whoever I can, and it'll be arbitrary, but maybe they have a contact. Because you can tell, you've been in networking groups, there are people that are like wolves. They're like hungry just to get business cards. So the connectors are the ones that are actually trying to get to know you, your story, and how they can help you. Giving without expectation. And Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about giving without expectation. So I subscribe to that a lot. So there's connectors. Collectors are the ones that are literally like Pokemon. Got to catch them all. You go to a networking event and you see people with business cards, and they just want business cards, so that they can go back as soon as they get home and add you all on LinkedIn. No authentic connection. Maybe they learn your name, and then they're just like, fantastic, thank you, George. Nice to meet you. We'll connect. But it's only to expand their network, okay? Yeah. And then the jerks are the ones that make zero connection at all. And I love how Colin says this, is that they'll go to a networking event knowing before anyone shows up, and they'll leave a business card of theirs on every single seat where they know that someone's going to sit down. So that when they know before they get to sit down, they see a card in there and they look at it. And for some miraculous reason, they think that someone's going to go, ooh, who's this guy? And put it in their pocket and actually search you up. The chances of that are very slim because you haven't bothered to put in the work to make the connection. So to get back to your original question is, I try to be that connector. That's somebody that actually listens to the key words and understanding. I'm terrible with names, but I try to remember the person's name, connect it to their face as soon as I see them. And Danny, our videographer here, he was one of those situations where he told me right off the bat, when I first met Danny, it was at a networking event at a local like growth hub in Vancouver, in Gastown.
Yeah.
And he told me...
Was it the Hive or
Invoke.
Yeah.
They kind of build out, they're responsible for Hootsuite and a couple other...
Invoke.
Yeah, Invoke
Invoker.
Media. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So he was there, and I was on a project with Invoke at the time, and he was doing like an open house, and he was telling me how much he was interested in getting into videography for the music industry and whatnot.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very small interaction, but I made a real connection with Danny and his friend that was there as well. We exchanged cards. And then I thought back a couple weeks later that, actually he had mentioned music videos, and about 3 years ago, when I first built my business, I actually met a guy named Stephen Burrell who built out a business for working with groups like Headley and some big bands. And I was like, I made a real connection. And how I catalog that is I actually have an Excel sheet which has lots of social interactions, emails, brief synopsises of every single conversation I've had business related with groups of people. And I remember that Stefan had made it into my Excel. So I didn't have his contacts offhand, but I was like, I don't even remember his name. I think it was Stefan. I typed in music videos and boom, popped it over to like 2012 or 2013, Stefan Burrell. And I emailed Danny and I said, hey, listen, I know we only had a small interaction, but I think this guy may be able to help you out. And so I introduced him to Stefan via email and I said, drop my name. I can't guarantee you he'll be like, oh yeah, Marco Pasqua, but I do know that we made enough of a strong connection where we actually connected that it may help you. And one thing led to another, and it resulted in Danny being able to work with Stefan directly, and it's really helped to catapult certain things for him in that aspect. So that's an idea of the Q principle in action. This is not rocket science. This is not me even trying to claim that this is a new system that is groundbreaking. This is not an infomercial you're going to see at 2 o'clock in the morning. This is a way in which I found to collect techniques that have worked for me and can work for other people just in this systematic approach. So making sure you make an authentic connection, utilizing your network to build out those connections, see how you can help to give without expectation. And 9 times out of 10, if you're giving without expectation, that person won't forget. And since then, Danny and I have worked together on a number of different things. And this, in fact, this very interview, as a result, came of Danny being like, hey, Marco, my buddy Adam's doing this thing.
Danny being a connector.
Exactly. So he really, Danny gets it, you get it. And I hope, and I know
learning.
people, when I first started building my business, they're like, I don't understand. What is the Q principle? And I'm like, you're thinking too deep into this. It's about approaching.
When you first said I want to stop you here because I want to make sure everybody looks it up and hears about it. When you first told me about it, for whatever reason, it registered as the Q principle, but it's not the Q principle.
Yeah.
It's the Cube principle.
An acronym. Creatively utilize your best energy.
Yeah.
Right? And people are like, well, what does that mean exactly? Well, it's understanding your network, what people bring to your network, utilizing it in such a way that you're not just take, because I was telling you before we turned the cameras on, you have to be strategic.
I think the camera was on.
Oh, it might have been on. We were talking about KFC legs and all this stuff. But anyways.
Hey, leave my legs alone.
Yeah, we'll leave your legs alone. So it's about basically utilizing those connections and understanding who's in your network and being strategic about when you're using that, I'll call it a chit or that IOU. It's not a real IOU, but it's knowing that you have that person in a high upstanding stage in life, perhaps, and you haven't reached out to them for any given thing, but maybe be strategic about when you're reaching out to them and saying, I could really use your help with this particular project or this particular challenge. And if you made a strong enough connection with that person, they'll remember you and they'll definitely reach out. And then it's just a ripple effect. It goes from there. It's because of the Q principle. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just put a name to it now. But I've just always been doing this. And this is what my wife said about magic, is that I strategically know the time to reach out to somebody. One of my dreams was to meet Michael J. Fox. And last year, I had an opportunity not only to meet Michael J. Fox, but sponsor his golf tournament, meet him directly, and to have one of your childhood heroes come up to you and say, you know what, Marco, I actually, I see the work you're doing. I hear about everything you're doing. And to be honest, you're an inspiration to me. I literally said at that moment that I could die, but my wife was like, no, you can't. I'm like, oh, right, yeah, Karen, yeah, my life, right, all of that stuff. No, but seriously, and it all came as a result of understanding who was in my network, knowing that that was a goal of mine, knowing that I had not ill intention to do it, but it's because I wanted to, not for any fame or fortune, I just wanted to thank him for being an inspiration to me. And I got to do that exact thing last year at a golf tournament with Mike. So that was great. And that was just me practicing what I preach and understanding that it's not about taking people and taking advantage of people. It's about building up your social network.
What tips could you offer somebody who wants to get better, who doesn't already have that magic?
Sure.
To get better at making those personal connections, those memorable connections.
Sure. So a great way, especially if you're a behind-the-scenes type of person who's not necessarily out there in the public, is through social media. We all use social media these days, or many of us do.
But what about like in person? You've got that person in front of you. Is there anything that you can do that you just met that person? Maybe you haven't exchanged a card yet, but you will. Is there anything that you can do at that sort of stage of the game to make yourself memorable enough that when you do follow them on Twitter or reach out via LinkedIn or whatever, that you're not just another sort of face in the room kind of thing. You're like, oh, he's that or she's that conversation I had.
So when you approach a lot of people, especially ones who are celebrities or are used to being approached, you have to realize they have a built-in filter to tune you out as soon as they think you're asking them for something. Because people are so used to being asked for something that it's just like, yeah, autograph, whatever. But the second you approach somebody with authenticity by saying, for example, instead of asking, can I ask you a few questions, or could I possibly get a few moments of your time for a coffee later on, literally approaching and being like, listen, I really respect the work you do, so it comes to you doing the homework before you go to an event, who might be in the room. Approaching those people and saying, would you be open to potentially having me either shadow you for a moment, or potentially, I respect your work so much that I would love if you'd be willing to mentor me, at least through a few conversations. The second somebody hears the word mentor or mentorship, that whole veil of their ego and being like, oh, yeah, whatever, buzz off, goes away. Because it's one of the most flattering things you can say to somebody, is you respect their work and how they conduct themselves so much that you would love for the opportunity to have almost an informational interview with them, but as a mentor, because you respect the way that they've come up and done things. That's how I got to talk to Gene Simmons from KISS, as I had the balls to go up to his daughter when we were shooting an episode of Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, and it was happening here locally. And the reason I was on the show, people were like, well, where's the connection there? Is the place that gave me physiotherapy growing up, that did a lot of my therapies to strengthen my body, was being featured because Sophie, she has a place in Whistler, and she has a center called Sophie's Place, which helps children that are in not great situations get back on their feet. And actually, it takes place in the same center that gave me physiotherapy. So they asked me to come out as an ambassador, and I thought, and that was right when I was building my business too. And I thought, man, who is one of the biggest branding experts in the world? Gene Simmons. His face is on everything. His tongue is world renowned. So I said, even if I can get a moment of his time, that'd be great. So we were shooting a scene together, and Sophie was asking me about the center and how it's impacted my life. And when we cut, I was like, if I just ask her, can I meet your dad? It's not going to go over well. And she's going to just be like, oh God, another person. But I opened up with, hey, Sophie, I'm a budding entrepreneur. I just started my business, so there's nothing about her dad yet. And I said, and I'm struggling with branding. I really want to learn how to get myself out there. And I had her attention now. And I said, knowing that, I know your dad's a branding expert. Not even necessarily this second. I didn't even know if Gene was there. But I said, do you think it would be possible if we exchange information? I'm a good guy, but I'm learning. I want to learn from the experts. Do you think your dad would have even 10 minutes of his time to look at my business card, to look at my logo, and give me feedback? And I was shocked because she looked at me and she said, well, how about right now? And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, my dad's in the green room. If you have time right now, I'll take you right now. Because we had a break between our scenes. And I was like, yes, I'm not going to say no to that opportunity. So next thing you know, I'm literally being ushered behind all these back rooms, and knock, knock, knock on the green door room, and opens up the door, and there's Gene Simmons and Shannon Tweed, his beautiful wife, sitting in the green room. And literally, it was like leaving a sheep to the wolves, because she opened up and it's her dad, so she's super casual. Hey, Dad, this is Marco. He's told me he's a budding entrepreneur. He wants your advice and feedback. I told him I was chill with it. I'm good with it. Here he is. Say hello. And she literally just closed the door. And now I'm sitting there in awe with my jaw dropped, and Gene's sitting there, and he's so, you can feel his presence when he's in the room, and he's just so, and I literally, what seemed like several minutes, but probably was only about 15 seconds of my jaw on the floor. He's like, so are you gonna come over here or what? And I was like, yes, sir, yeah. So, you know, what I thought was gonna be a couple-minute conversation, he'd brush me off, ended up being about a 30 to 40-minute conversation about branding, giving me book recommendations, talking about body language. It was actually Gene gave me the biggest tidbit or advice when we left the conversation, because people don't know this, but my right arm is also affected by my cerebral palsy. So the dexterity is affected, and every time when you go to shake someone's hand, people lead in with the right hand. Most people are right-handed. So I went to go lead in with my right, knowing full well it's probably not going to go over well because my right hand sucks, but that's okay. I call it an organic prosthetic. It's real, but it doesn't work very well. So I go in and give a handshake, and Gene looks at me, and he's a no bullshit kind of guy, and he's just like, that was a shitty handshake. And I was just like, sorry, sir, but what you don't know, and I thought I had him in a corner, is that my hand is affected by my disability, and I thought he'd feel really shitty. Not that I was trying to make him feel shitty, but anyways, and he goes, no, it doesn't matter, and it's not gonna matter, because whether you're affected by your disability or not, people are gonna judge you within the first 6 to 10 seconds of meeting you, and what's the first thing you do? Typically, you shake their hand. So work on that and learn about body language. And I took that to heart, because then I started to absorb myself in body language and how subconsciously people judge you when you enter a room, and how you're sitting upright, and that's where the energy piece and the cue principle comes in. What kind of energy are you projecting? Are your shoulders back? Are you confident in yourself? Are you assertive? Is that the way people are going to take you? Yeah, you might have some flaws, and you might not have arms that work that well, but be conscious of it. He said when you're shaking hands, you want to make sure that the thumb and the other person's thumb is web to web, because that means that you're asserting yourself. And there's a whole other thing I can go into about being the submissive palm or being the dominant palm, being the palm on top. If you watch President Trump,
I knew you were going there.
Well, he does that. He does the really aggressive handshake, and he makes sure that his palm is facing upward, because the upward palm is the dominant palm. And it's all psychology. People don't think about it, but watch Trump now when you do it. And Trudeau was the first person that when Trump tried to do his yank handshake, because he pulls the person in and takes the top position. Trudeau had watched his interviews beforehand, so he knew Trump was going to do the yank, and Trudeau's a pretty strong guy, so you can see Trump trying to do the yank, and the hands don't go anywhere, and Trudeau, with a smile on his face, is just like, and he keeps it right in the center, and he loved it. So watch that interview again when they first interact with each other. It was gold, and I almost fell out of my chair when I saw that interview. So there's a lot to body language, and I credit Gene Simmons for really getting me down that rabbit hole, we'll call it.
You have a way of taking somebody down a rabbit hole, and then like somewhere in the middle you're like, are we still on the same topic? And then near the end, you sort of circle back and you're like,
yeah,
that all makes sense. This was an amazing answer.
That's right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. It is long-winded.
No, it's good though.
But that's what you get out of me when you get me as a speaker. This is what you
thoughtful
get.
replies.
That's right. You
like
get thoughtful replies. I'm not going to give you.
You get a story with it. You get a celebrity.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Dish them out, man. Rapid fire.
Cool. I've got one last question,
Okay.
and then we'll do some very quick ones that you can answer real quickly.
Sure.
You talked a little bit earlier about when you die you want to leave a mark, when you whatever, right? Do you find yourself thinking a lot about, I guess we'd call that legacy?
Yeah, of course I do.
And
sure. Yeah.
What kind of mark do you want to leave behind?
I don't know. The weird thing about it is that I think it stems from my dad always telling me that
it's weird to ask. You're such a young guy, so it's kind of weird to ask.
Yeah.
That
Well,
question,
listen.
Still,
I'm not gonna write my autobiography anytime soon.
I know.
Right? I still feel there's many chapters to go.
I think it's important to think about.
It is important to think about
it.
It is because if there's something I know after having 13 surgeries and being born with a disability is you have no idea what tomorrow brings. Mm-hmm. And so I could become very ill tomorrow and not be able to continue on the legacy in which I'm doing. Sure. And I think it stems from my dad, instilling in me from an early age. Like he always said to me, punctuality is so important. And if you're not early, it means you're late. And if you're late, you're an asshole. So really, it was about really carrying that on and understanding that, yeah, you know what? As my dad's not as articulate as I am, perhaps, but he's a no bullshit kind of Italian dude. And so it was that approach that I said to myself, yeah, if I'm were to leave a legacy behind and really make an impact, how many people's lives can I impact before I go? And I think that's what I understand. People go, well, I don't really know what I want to do in life. I think the meaning of life is literally to live. People go, well, that's a really simple answer, but it isn't. It's about the lessons that you learn as you go through them. And we're willing to be introspective and acknowledge the lessons for what they are. So each time, even if I've had a really shitty day, I will look back and go, what can I actually gain out of that? There obviously was something that I was supposed to gain out of this experience. Because there's a lot of theories as to what this thing we call consciousness really is. There's a lot of billionaires that believe we potentially could be in a simulation. There's a lot of theories out there. But whatever the theory is, it's what can you do in living your life? Because you can't control everyone else's actions, but you can control your own actions. So what can I do to create an impact and affect the most people in my life and see that change? And I've seen that change. I've literally worked with clients who told me that before working with me as a mentor, they were suicidal. And I told you this story when we met. Yeah. I had a client who has the same disability as myself, and he was really struggling in life. And he even told me, I don't have a lot of money, but I have a lot of insight. And I said, it's not about the money for me, it's about me being able to help you. So we structured a deal where I was able to help him out and not where he didn't have to worry about the financial aspect of it. And I'm able to really help him see him for who he is. And he told me he'll be forever grateful. That's why I do what I do, because somebody told me that I literally saved their life by being willing to give them the time of day. And that's the legacy, right?
Enough said.
Yeah.
You're not...
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah.
You're not. I don't have to do any follow-up questions with you. Like we actually. I mean, it's a kind of a longer interview, but
sure.
There's. I don't have to add anything. It's kind of beautiful.
We're exactly 1 hour, so it's actually average.
Amazing, amazing. So I've got a couple questions that I chose just because. We'll try and keep them short because otherwise Danny's going to be editing for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
But
that's the legacy, Danny. That's the legacy.
But just a sort of couple questions to finish up, and
sure.
they just require kind of a short answer. But I thought these ones would be really good for to ask you.
Sure.
Question 1: do you ever get stuck in a rut? Like your
yeah.
motivation just. Even today, like I remember I was sitting at the computer and I was just, I don't want to fucking do this right now.
Yeah,
like
I hear ya.
So I got up and I went and did something else. But how do you navigate those
sure.
ruts?
I'll be completely vulnerable right now in saying that that there are days where I still have bouts with depression, and they actually say that people who expose themselves the most to stages or the media or whatever are some of the most depressed people you actually ever meet, but you won't learn it. I'm here to say that it does happen for me, and I have shitty days too. I think really what it comes down to, and I'm very fortunate, I love my wife very much, and the reason being is that she's a great cheerleader. So she recenters me. So doing exactly what you did. Take yourself out of the element. So if you're used to those four walls because you're around your computer a lot, take yourself completely somewhere different. The first year I built the business was the toughest because I'm such a people person. I was used to being around tons of people, and now all I had was my four walls, my pets. And it got depressing after a while.
You got some pretty cool pets, though.
I do. They're pretty neat. Yeah, a bird and a bunny. And so I would take myself out, even just go to the local Tim Hortons or whatever, and just to hear people murmuring and doing their thing as I'm typing away, it changed me completely. But also, getting out there, and for example, for me, I got to be more disciplined about physical activity, like going back to my sports in my background, is just working out and getting out there, because some of the best ways to exert that vibration, that energy out of your body to reset yourself and get new energy is to expend all the stuff that is feeling so dark inside of you. So working out is a huge way to do that. As foofy as some people may think of it, meditation, if you're not into the ohms out loud, you can literally do meditations in your head. You don't have to, and it's not about necessarily silence too. You can do binaural beats. I think I told you about binaural beats. You did. So you can use certain sound waves to clear your head. So all of these different strategies, you can research them yourself, but you can get yourself out of those ruts. But also acknowledge that it's okay to feel that way for a brief period too, because it's how you become the closest to what makes you raw as a human being. The reason why we are evolved above other species is that it's our emotional capacity. So embrace that emotion.
This guy doesn't do short answers. I should have known that. I walked right into it.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna work. The next one will be quick. Advice
to your 20-year-old self.
Oh my goodness.
Is this going to be a long answer?
No. Cut back the swagger.
Oh, you had so much swagger.
Oh God.
All that swagger.
Yeah, I think cut back the swagger. Cut back the swagger and start to really dial in to the people you're connecting with, because it didn't happen for me right away, right? There was a lot of, and I think it was a defense mechanism. I was using swagger as a way of putting a veil above myself. So cut that stuff out and really remember what actually matters. The things that are truly important. And at the time, as a 20-year-old, I'm sure the things that were important are much different now as a 32-year-old. So
yeah. All right, so I got 3 more.
Sure.
These ones are kind of confusing, so I apologize if you have to think about them a little bit.
No, that's fine.
What's one thing that you do that people think is crazy, and why do you do it?
Oh, wow. Well, this is an easy one.
I know it
is. Keeping that Excel.
Oh, see, that's not what I thought the answer would be.
Interesting. I'm curious as to what you thought, but you can tell me
probably have something to do with some of these conspiracies.
Oh, well, there's that, but that's totally unrelated to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But no, honestly,
the spreadsheet.
The spreadsheet. You can use a standard CRM system or a piece of software to catalog, but it's the discipline behind it.
I was going to ask about that. How do you stay so disciplined?
So it depends. So I deliberately took a 1 month off of it to see how it would affect me, to see how, because I've been doing it since I built the business in 2012. So that's 5 years.
Damn.
So I took a month off.
How many rows is the spreadsheet?
Oh, well, I do it by tabs by year.
Oh, okay.
Right? So after 2012 and 2013 starts, then I start a new thing.
Smart. That makes sense.
But it's all color-coded based on production activities, networking and emails, and administration tasks. And so it's so that I can look at by year end and see how many rows are green, meaning administration, how many are actual production, which is blue, and how many are orangey yellow, which is emails, conversations. And I use that as a way of looking back on the year and saying how I invested my time. Because currently we don't have a way of time traveling, but as somebody who's obsessed with time travel and Back to the Future and all that stuff, you never know. But for now, I'm able to look back and say, how did I invest my time, and was it the best use of my time? And it's also a great way of keeping yourself disciplined and saying, no, it's important to me that I do this so that I continue this going forward. No one told me I had to do this, but I started it and I just didn't stop. So this month, I'm getting back, starting back into it in August. After I've done sort of my cleanse of it to see what, and you know what? I found that in the month off, I haven't liked it. I actually like having it there as a throwback. Don't get me wrong, all the things I took as a month off, I actually still have cataloged. They're on my phone and they're in very brief synopses so that I can go back and add everything back in. That's going to take me some time. It's going to take about 2 hours to get everything back in, but I'm so looking forward to it.
Do you have? I wonder if I could ask you for like a template or something like that. Obviously, I don't need the information inside it, although I'm sure I'd love it. but just like a template that I could link to or something like that, so people could see, okay, the tabs are set up by year, and you've got these columns on each one of the tabs, and that would be amazing.
I can totally just build one out based on what I have, and then there you go.
That would be incredible. Yeah, I would use that, absolutely. Sweet. What is the most interesting conversation you've had lately? Not including this one.
Wow. Interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I would say I actually have some of the most interesting conversations with my wife.
I got that.
Yeah.
I totally got that.
Yeah, like her and I, some of our favorite things to do is like sit back with a glass of wine and just talk about how things work. Right? And to get back to the conspiracy theory thing, there's a lot of, we call it critical thinking that we like to do about the world, about the economy, about the fact that we live in this type of society that we do, where you do something for a dollar amount, and then your time is based on that dollar amount, and somebody gives you a financial token saying this is how much your time is worth. It seems odd, considering we're such an empathetic race, that is how we structure society. And I have this, you want this, you pay me this to get this. So this is actually why I have never been driven by the financial aspect of my business, although it's proven to be successful. It's never been about that. So really digging deep into those kinds of conversations of how could we approach the world in a different way. There's a lot of talk about universal basic income. Guys like Mark Zuckerberg are talking about that. Say what you want as far as motivation, but it's interesting. The second you take away people worrying about the financial strain of having to keep their lights on, it means that they can follow their passion. And ultimately, what I'm trying to do in my speaking is show people that you can follow your passion by utilizing your network.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What's I going to say there?
Not coming to me. I think I'm getting tired.
Okay.
Last question.
Sure.
What do people never ask you, but you wish they would?
Wow, that's a tough one.
They're thinkers.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. Never asked me, but I wish they would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say maybe people never.
Or maybe you wish more people would ask you about something in particular.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people, when it comes to having a disability, people get really nervous about asking me any questions around that. I wish that people felt more comfortable to be vulnerable and ask those types of questions. Now, granted,
instead of going to Google.
Yeah, going to Google. Yeah, exactly, and asking it for advice. That's a great way of actually segueing and saying that if you know somebody who has a disability, or perhaps someone who doesn't, or may have an invisible one, if you feel like you want to be able to accommodate them, just ask them personally. Don't feel like you have to walk on eggshells. That would be great advice, because there's a lot of people that, yeah, they maybe get offended by you asking, but for example, one thing I don't want people to do is come up and just start pushing me, and that happens all the time. Like, I'm in public, I'm wheeling with my earbuds in, and like literally downtown Vancouver, and all of a sudden I'm going up a hill and people are just like starting pushing me, and I look behind me thinking it might be a friend, and it's totally a stranger. And I'm like, oh, hi, can I help you? Yeah, and I'm like, can I help you? And it's like, oh no, I saw you going up the hill, just giving you a hand. If I did that to you as somebody walking, you'd be like, am I being assaulted right now? I have no idea what's happening.
Let me give you a push.
Right? So there is a balance to asserting yourself into a situation, but literally, if you want somebody to be the most comfortable with you, lay all the cards on the table and just ask those questions, those tough questions. And you may sometimes not get favorable answers, but at least you had the balls to ask.
Love it. Great answer.
I don't even know how to end that any better.
I mean, the mic is lapelled, so I can't do the mic drop, but boom. Yeah. Lapel
Perfect.
drop.
Cool, man. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. You're fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I plug. What do you plug your website?
Sure.
Whatever.
All right.
It's yours.
So instead of saying thecubeprinciple.com, because that's confusing for people, they spell it Principal. You can go to Marco Pasqua. Yeah, you can go to marcopasqua.com, and I'll take you to the same information if they want to learn more about me. And other than that, if you're interested in learning about the President's Group, or even some of the work that I'm doing in technology, which we didn't really get to touch on that today.
With Sean.
But Sean is my business
partner. Do you want to plug him?
Yeah, I will plug Sean, actually. I will plug Reality Controls. We do motion.
Is that .com?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. RealityControls.com. And look into the work that we're doing. We're doing a lot in now the accessibility space, but we started out doing motion and voice control, augmented virtual reality, a bunch of stuff across the spectrum. Look into Reality Controls. We would love to work with you as well. So marcopasqua.com, realitycontrols.com. And for the President's Group, if you're interested in learning about inclusive employment, which is awesome, accessibleemployers.ca. Not presidentsgroup.com, accessibleemployers.ca.
Perfect. We'll put all that in the show notes, and that's it for me, man.
Thanks.
I really, really appreciate your time. That was an incredible interview.
Sweet.
Thank you, everyone, for your time, for your attention, most of all. I know these can be kind of long, but I find that that's the way that I'm able to get the most good stuff. If you enjoyed it, let us know. I'm sure Marco would like to know. I would like to know. Danny would like to know. Everybody involved in putting this show together, Sarah included, would love to know. Questions, I'm sure Marco would be very happy to answer them in the comments section on Twitter. I'm sure you can find him via his website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It lets us know that you're engaged, you're interested, and it's the fuel that keeps that fire burning. So I appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys. See ya.